Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the International Grapevine. This is your host, Wallingford Lee. Tonight on the Grapevine, we want to go back or go right now to the 2020 election that's coming up. We want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the election, the pros and the cons, and what can happen in this upcoming election. There's a lot going on right now in America with the coronavirus. There's a lot going on with the unemployment being as high as it is. And more importantly, we want to take a look at the current administration to see what they're doing and where they're going. The last time we listened to our president, he said that he has done more for Black people than Lincoln. Well, tonight on the Grapevine, we're going to find out how accurate it is, because we have a special guest that we have worked with in the past, a fine gentleman by the name of Dr. Anthony Andrews, who happened to be a Democratic district leader in the Queens area. One of the things and why we wanted Mr. Andrews on the show is because he's a no-nonsense type of person, and he tells it like it is, and he's been around for a long time. More importantly, he has been a very hard worker for all those folks out in Queens. Mr. Andrews, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. And since our last engagement on your show, I have acquired my doctorate in executive leadership. So
congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here in this new capacity. The doctoral program changes you. The doctorate process changes you. And so I think that even though we've done this interview before, and we did it 4 years ago now, can you imagine?
Yes, we did
the last interview 4 years ago when we couldn't imagine this guy being elected. And we talked about the importance of people getting out to vote. A lot of people looked at the YouTube show, looked at your show, who watch your show all the time. A lot of my people, supporters, friends, family looked at it. I circulated on social media, and yet somehow this guy made it into the White House. Unbelievable.
Totally unbelievable. Well, let's see. Who do you think is going to win this election coming up?
I feel confident that Joe Biden will win this election. I think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris make a really good team, and Joe is ahead by 9 percentage points. If you look at the plus minus on most polls, he's still ahead by at least 4 or 5 if you acknowledge that there's possible sample error. And in that case, he's still not comfortably ahead, but he has a very small window, and I think he's in good shape. The only thing I'm concerned about right now is that the economy hasn't tanked and that the S&P reached its highest today. And
wow.
People tend to look at the economy and tend to look at their stocks because they're thinking about retirement. And I've spoken to a lot of people who have said, oh, my 401k is doing pretty well. The guy may be a jerk, he may be a clown, but I'm looking good with retirement. But with him talking about cutting the taxes that actually provide Social Security, you may look good with your retirement, but once that money is gone, you may not have Social Security to take care of you. So I think he's doing a lot.
What is the key components with him? Just as you mentioned, the economy is good, but there's more at stake. There are immigration matters. There's the coronavirus, which he never took seriously. It will go away in seconds. It will go away in a couple of days. He's the president of the most powerful nation in the world. You expect a certain amount of responsibility and seriousness. And unfortunately, in his administration, everything that goes good, he takes credit. But if it gets sour, he doesn't take responsibility. So where do we go from here otherwise than the economy? Where do we go from here with him?
Well, I think we've got to, as you talked about, I think we've got to talk about the other things. I think there are a lot of people in the rural states, not just in the big states, but in, the urban cities, but also in the states that have huge rural populations. And the rural populations, I think people are being now just starting to get concerned about the coronavirus because now they're aware that they can catch it. I think for many months, the rural population wasn't affected, but now they're being more cautious in terms of going out and in terms of doing things. So now that it's impacting their lifestyle and some of their relatives are catching it and they're passing away in the rural areas of states like Wisconsin and Wyoming, and of course, in other states like Ohio in the Midwest, I think now people are going to take that a little bit more seriously. I think people will now understand that what he did was criminal, not looking at this coronavirus, taking it seriously, telling people it's going to go away just like the flu during flu season. All the things he said, which a lot of people believed, a lot of his supporters believed. I mean, talking about using bleach and all these other kinds of things that he was saying, which made people think that this is just a simple virus, a simple infection, and this can be dismissed. I think that, again, we've got to begin to talk about those things. We've got to begin to talk about how mean he is, how he speaks to people, how he dismisses people, people that have been on staff in bureaucratic jobs for years, high-ranking officials that he's appointed. Anyone that doesn't agree with him, anyone that makes, as far as he's concerned, makes him look bad by not going along with whatever program he is putting forth, he dismisses. It's almost like he's still playing the reality show and saying you're fired, right? But unfortunately, this is the American government, and we thought you couldn't do it, but he's doing it and violating every ethical principle that a president has ever upheld over all these years that we've had this country.
I think one of the things that affected a little bit in defense to him, he's a businessman, a successful businessman, and I think he brought that idea to the White House. But he's got to understand that it's the most powerful place in the world, and he's the president, and as such, he's a president that every people, not certain people. And to take an attitude like he took with the coronavirus, it's a little bit surprising because you have doctors, you have all kind of important people next to him, and he wasn't listening to them. And now we have a serious problem. We have over 170,000 people dead. And if it keeps going like that, I think by now in December, we'll be over 200,000 people, which would be terrible for this nation. We're the greatest nation in terms of anything you can name. And the other places seems to be controlling the virus a little bit much better than we are. So I'm truly concerned in terms of where we go from here with him, with those type of, the way how he comes across. He's got to listen to the doctors and to people that know, like Dr. Fauci. Where do we go from here then?
Well, as Governor Cuomo said in New York, he talked about this extensively. Every press conference he did, and he did daily press conferences when we were the epicenter. And where I live in Queens was the epicenter of the epicenter. And since we've talked in the past 4 years, I've become the chairperson of the Queens Hospital Center and also the chairperson of the council of all the community advisory boards for the Health and Hospital Corporation of New York City. And of course, in our urban city here in New York, we were hit the hardest. And
Very much so.
Queens was hit the hardest of the hard. So we called ourselves, unfortunately, the epicenter of the epicenter. Elmhurst Hospital in Queens,
yes,
had so many people that we were trying to bring into the hospital to save, and we weren't able to save so many people, and we were begging the White House for help. And Governor Cuomo kept saying, this is not about politics. This is about people, and we're going to follow the science. And that's what he did. He followed the science, and people can be critical, but no one can accurately predict how someone would govern in the midst of the crisis that we had, the greatest pandemic that we've had since the early 1900s. I think given the circumstances, he did an excellent job. He saved a lot of lives, and he set an example for the rest of the nation. In fact, yesterday he talked about the fact that he has written a book, and he will be publishing a book on his leadership during the coronavirus, and hopefully give that to others that they can use that as a platform, or I should say maybe not necessarily a platform, but that they can use this as a guide to what they should do while they're using their platform as leaders in other states.
Obviously, a lot of kudos have to go to Governor Cuomo, a no-nonsense guy who a lot of people in New York scream when he shut down everything. But let me tell you, he was a thinking man. He planned every living day. He gave an update of what was taking place. And thank God under his leadership, on the doctors, the nurses in the hospital, and all the workers, we were able to bring it down and control what was going on in New York. Let's talk a little bit about Biden. Well, do you think that Biden is the appropriate man uh, going for president right now? And what does he bring to the table along with Kamala Harris?
So I think Biden is an excellent candidate. If you listen to everyone who talks about Joe Biden, uh, every single person who knows him, any of the leaders who are out speaking at the Democratic National Convention, just about all of them. Michelle Obama talked about it yesterday, talked about him being a man of faith. You're not going to see Joe Biden run to a church that he's never attended with the Bible in his left hand, talking about um, I'm doing God's work, or standing in front of the statue in Washington D.C., the Knights of Columbus Memorial, and talking about the fact that he's a man of faith and he's doing good work. But Joe Biden doesn't say it. He doesn't talk about it much. But everyone that you hear speak about him, in every interview you'll see, they talk about him being a man of faith. I think right now what this country needs is faith, because I think a lot of people have lost faith in the system. They've lost faith in leadership. They've lost faith in the government. And I think what we need is somebody who believes and somebody who can get everyone else to have faith that we can turn this thing around and we can change matters. I think Kamala Harris is the right person to lead with him. I think, yes, some people have said she's more centrist. Some people have said she's more middle of the road. She's a conservative Democrat. And yet you'll see progressives that now say, we're very pleased with her progressive stance on certain issues and the things that she's doing. So I think you have someone who appeals to congressional leaders, people who respect her in the Senate also. People in government respect what she's done over the years. And I think that people politically can gravitate towards her because she's not necessarily conservative and she's not necessarily progressive. Is she perhaps more conservative than progressive? Yes, but she has a lot of liberal thoughts and views, and she's created a lot of progressive policies in California where she was the attorney general. The fact that she's a prosecutor, I think that appeals to people who are concerned about law and order right now. People are concerned about bringing the country back together, but also about feeling safe walking the streets again. So I think that having someone who is strong like her, someone who I think Putin fears, I should say. I think Putin actually fears Kamala Harris. I think a lot of the world leaders kind of fear this woman. They think, what if she ever became president? What if Biden, after 4 years decides not to run again and Kamala Harris is the leading candidate? So we have to deal with Biden now, who is a gentleman in the highest order. Kamala Harris is a very graceful, classy woman and a leader, but she doesn't take any nonsense. And as a former prosecutor, she has no problem making the tough decisions and living with those decisions. She's done it all her life. So I think Biden, with his leadership, the fact that he served as the vice president under, I think, one of the greatest presidents in this century, creating policies like universal health care. And I think Biden being a part of all those things, I think he has gotten the experience as the vice president and as a U.S. senator that he needs to be a good governing leader, to be the head of state.
I agree with you 100%. I think both of them make a great team. I think Biden have shown a lot of vision by choosing her. He had the opportunity with a lot of capable ladies such as Warren and all the other ladies, and he chose her. I think just as you mentioned, she's an attorney. She's a no-nonsense when she wants to be and have to be. She's extremely charming, as you can tell. But of course, business is business, and that's what she's all about. I was shocked and really turned off when some attorney mentioned to Trump maybe she wasn't qualified because her parents were foreigner. I was shocked because the president of the United States of America, his parents are not from here, and he's the president. So maybe should we remove him? No, we can't, and we shouldn't. So, those type of nonsensical talk, whether they're president, whether they were born here or not, are things that really turn me off. I just hope that Biden and Camilla can bring some stability, some leadership, and great ideas to turn around this nation in the things that we falter in, such as immigration and this coronavirus issue. The one thing that I want to mention to you that I lost a little bit hope on was the polls. When we go back to 2016, if you remember clearly, Mrs. Clinton was way ahead, and next thing you know, bingo, she fell. What do you think happened there, and how you think the polls will react going forward now? Would it be better kept, or the numbers would be better understood?
So I think the one thing that we made a mistake in not doing was going after those states that were states that we feel that or we felt that we would lose anyway. And then there were the states that were the battleground states. How much energy and time and effort was put into this? There's certain states where Hillary Clinton didn't even make a campaign stop because she felt it's not really worth it. Let me focus on my strength and not from weakness. And ordinarily, that's what you do. However, in this case, there's no stone left unturned, and Biden is going after every single state. And we're hoping that, again, this will be different, that the outcome will be much different than the last time.
I think you're right. The only concern that I have with the ticket with Biden and Ms. Harris is that they're not directly with the public. Everything is through TV right now because of coronavirus. I don't know if that will affect them, but time will tell. Tell me, how strong is the Black vote or the Latino vote going forward in these situations?
Well, I'd like to think it's very strong. I'd like to think that there will be a number of people of color who come out and support Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris, not only being a woman of color, a Black woman who experienced all the things that other Black women who are the strongest voters in the Democratic Party, by the way. Not only has she experienced all the things that other Black women have experienced growing up and throughout her life, but she can use that and apply that to the position of vice presidency when she gets there. So I think a lot of Black women will come out, and that's our strongest, obviously our strongest population in the Democratic Party, and I think that's going to be big for us. I think that women, period, that women overall will see her as somebody who can be an effective leader in difficult times. And I hope that that appeal comes across to all women. And I think that makes her a huge asset for Joe Biden. I think, again, Latinos, I think because the Latino vote is so divided, South American, Caribbean, so on and so forth, I think it depends on the Latino vote, where that vote is coming from. I think that there may be Mexicans in the United States who are voting and will vote strongly if they come out and vote against Trump. I think those people who are impacted by the immigration policies in South America may do the same thing. We'll have to see. I'm not sure in Miami. I think because the Cubans were very upset with some things that he did, I think the Cubans in Miami will come out very strong, and that will help us to win Florida. So I think that there are states that will benefit. If the Mexicans come out in strong numbers, I think that will benefit Texas. I think that if the Cubans come out in high numbers, that will benefit Biden in Florida. So I think depending on where you're talking about in the United States, the Latino vote may come out and impact things a little stronger than in other states. I think overall, if the Latino vote wasn't so divided between, the different populations, I think it would be easier to say the Latino vote is going to come out strong. But I don't see any one candidate that the Latino vote coalesces around. I think that there are some Latinos that may favor Trump, and they may favor Donald Trump because they think a lot of the Christian and evangelical churches are saying that he's the candidate of faith. He believes that there should be free choice of faith universally. He's the person who's been championing Christian values. I don't know if he's necessarily exhibited them all the time, but I think when you go through the Bible Belt in particular, and in some of these evangelical churches, they see this as a guy who talks about God and who is not afraid to speak about God and Christ. And they believe this, and they think that because of that, he may be a candidate that would be a better suited candidate to be the leader of this free country. So I think I'm not so sure the Latino vote is coalesced around any candidate at this particular time because of different issues and how they may feel about different issues. You see the head of Goya, the CEO of Goya, come out and
supported Trump.
Right. At a press conference, been talking about his support. You see Goya cans on the desk in the White House in the Oval Office, right? So I think that you're going to see a split in the Latino vote. I think what we're counting on is a strong black vote, especially a strong female black vote, and also a strong liberal progressive white vote to come out, in addition to a group of Republicans and conservatives to see
Mhm.
in the wrong direction.
Well, obviously, I'll say this much to you.
Okay.
I think that we need the Latino vote, but just like you say, I think it's split all over the place and it's somewhat unpredictable right now. I think in California and Texas, I don't think he has a leg to stand on because of what happened to the children them that came in here illegal, how they
Absolutely.
were put into cages like animals, separated from their mom and dad. That was so barbaric, considering that he's a man who's a father and has grandchildren. I know you got to stand up. I mean, don't get me wrong, you got to close the border. I don't have a problem with him closing the border. But the treatment, these are human beings. We'll be right back on the International Grapevine as we continue talking to Dr. Andrews about the upcoming election and the expectation. We'll be right back on the Grapevine.
All right.
Hi. Sorry to keep you.
That's all right. You ready to go to work?
Oh my God. I'm so ready to go to work. I was raised to take action. My mother knew that she was raising two black daughters who would be treated differently because of how they looked. Growing up, whenever I got upset about something, my mother would look me in the eye and ask, "So what are you gonna do about it?" That's why, when I saw a broken justice system, I became a lawyer to try and fix it. It's why, during the foreclosure crisis, I took on the big banks as California's Attorney General. It's why, as United States Senator, I have fought to represent people like my mother, people who politicians often overlook or don't take seriously. Right now, America needs action. In the middle of a pandemic, the president is trying to rip away health care. While small businesses close, he's given breaks to his wealthy donors. And when the people cried out for support, he tear-gassed them. America is in crisis, and I know Joe Biden will lead us out of it. He's a man of faith, decency, and character. He raised his family that way. I saw it firsthand with my good friend Bo. As Joe says, we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. But together, it's a battle we can win. We just have to take action.
First of all, is the answer yes?
The answer is absolutely yes, Joe, and I am ready to work. I am ready to do this with you, for you. I'm just deeply honored, and I'm very excited.
And we're here in International Grapevine talking about the 2020 election that's coming up. As those who watch TV and the media know that the Democrats had their first presentation last night and that Mrs. Obama did a wonderful job in delivering her message. And now we have to wait after next 3 or 4 days as the Democrat finish to see what the Republicans are going to present it. Obviously, our president is running and he has a very strong base that usually back him. So this is not going to be easy for the Democrats. And it's not going to be easy either because the Senate are mostly Republican and they control a lot. So I think the Biden ticket is going to have a run for their money. And this is going to be an opportunity where Biden, even though he's a gentleman and a fine gentleman, he's going to have to roll up his sleeve. There's going to be a couple of debates and he's going to have to come on strong to match Trump. And as mentioned to you before, Mr. Trump has a strong base and he's the current president. So we'll see where it goes. Now, Dr. Andrews, I haven't said those words. I like what you said about the split of the Latino vote, but I still think that there are possibilities of grabbing them. I think Florida will be a little tough because Trump won big in Florida last time, but we'll see where it goes. I think one of the key components to the Biden group is going to be obviously Kamala Harris and the people that he has behind him. He seems to have a lot of strong people behind him, so we'll see where it goes. What do you think, how Mr. Biden will favor in a debate with Trump? What do you think will come out of that?
I think you're right. I think Vice President Biden is a classy individual. He likes to keep things at a certain level. He won't stoop to the levels that maybe Trump would stoop to. But I think he's going to have to roll his sleeves up, and I think he's got to be ready for a bare knuckle fight with this guy. This guy, there's nothing he won't say, there's nothing he won't do to pander to the public to make sure that his supporters are rallying behind him. And they'll rally behind him if we get beaten in these debates. So I think Vice President Biden has definitely got to be willing to not necessarily stoop to this level, but to be ready to come very strong and to be very clear with his message in terms of what we want to do with this country. And I think, again, he doesn't have to take shots because I'm sure Trump will then take shots at him. But I think he's got to be clear that even if you're taking shots at me, I won't go to that level. I'm going to talk about your record. I'm going to talk about what you didn't do. I'm going to talk about all the lives that we lost to coronavirus. It was something that would just go away one day. And I think that as long as he talks about his record and he talks about what he hasn't done and what he has done to bring this country to the point that we are at now, where we have a divided country, I think that once he does that, I think that people will begin to hear his message, and then he can talk about some of the other things that we're putting forth in the Democratic platform at the convention this week.
I agree with you 100%. I think in this type of debate, Biden's going to have to be really tough and have all his ducks lined up properly to answer Trump. And also, he has a lot of things that he can bring up. He can bring up the love affair that Trump seemed to have with Putin and the love affair that he has with a little man out in North Korea. But, you know, again, it's not going to be easy. Like I said to you, Mr. Trump has a very strong base behind him, and it's all going to be tested. This is the moment. What is your feeling, your thought process, the relationship that Mr. Trump seems to have with Putin? They have met a couple of times, and he has not confronted him about anything. What is your point of view on that?
I think Trump is scared of him. I think that any leader with any type of savvy would have found a way to be able to confront him about things such as the interference in the elections, such as what they're talking about right now in terms of Putin and what he has done in terms of interference with the government here. I think that anyone with any savvy would have found a way to address that unless they were scared. And it wasn't a matter of having the savvy to address that and approaching it a certain way. It was a matter of them being afraid to actually confront the person for fear of what might come afterwards. I don't think he's ready to deal with Putin in any negotiations. And I think that he thinks he can probably, outmaneuver him because he's not strong enough to overpower him. But I don't think he's smart enough to overpower Putin or outmaneuver him. And I think the only way you can deal with the bully is to confront the bully and to call the bully on the things that they're doing and to let them know that you're not going to tolerate the bullying anymore. That's when the way that we've been taught since we were kids. How do you beat a bully? You confront the bully. You make sure the bully knows you're going to stand up to him. And I don't think
it's the only way.
Right. I just don't think he's capable of doing it.
Do you think the Russians are interfering in the current election right now?
I think they're trying to. I think that social media has been used to start rumors, to get people to think about things. I think the Russians, I think China maybe. I think China obviously has a stake in seeing Trump succeed, win, and stay in office. People would think, no, because he's done some things to slap their hands on some things. I think they realize a tougher president, somebody would come and they would be a tougher president, would be tougher for them to deal with. And I think they're quite happy with him. People would say, no, how can they be happy with him? Because, he's had some sanctions that he's
put against him.
He hasn't done nearly enough.
But China is difficult to deal with. If we're looking at our house, most of the stuff that we have at home is made either in China or Japan. Too many things, and we have to find a way to have more competent jobs here at home in America China is too much into our pockets and into our home. Maybe I'm wrong. What's your thought process?
I'll tell you what I think. I think that there was a statistic the other day that stated that the net worth of the billionaires of America was, I don't know, some $500 million or $500 billion or whatever the case would be when the Trump administration started. And I could be wrong with the numbers, but some astronomical figure in the billions, right? And now it is like $3 trillion. Now, in 4 years, the billionaires during Trump's reign of terror have actually prospered. And I think a lot of his friends have benefited from the relationships that have been developed in these other countries. He put a lot of donors in as ambassadors to other countries. He put them in general counsel positions. He's done a lot in terms of making sure that his friends were able to benefit from his presidency. He's made money himself. His net worth has grown. When he got in, we were talking about, the fact that he bankrupted Atlantic City, destroyed that city. And now we're talking about this guy being worth several times more than he was when he got in. I think it's all been about a parlor game for him. I think it's about a shell game, and he shuffles the shells and he says, let's see if you can find the walnut. And when you get to the end and you pick up a shell, you realize it's not there and it's not there. But I think if you really had an opportunity and you picked up the third shell, the nut wouldn't be there either. The guy he's made sure that he has benefited, he and his friends. And I think that because of that, foreign relations is not going to be any better in terms of, our country being looked at as the superpower of the world. I think right now we're the laughing stock, except amongst his friends who I believe all have benefited from his presidency.
Very interesting indeed. I got a two-part question for you. One is, how do you explain that every president that's been in the White House the last, 60 years or whatever, showed the last 5 years of their taxes? He has refused. He claimed that he's been audited and stuff like that. But if he has nothing to hide, what are the purpose you think why he doesn't reflect and show his taxes?
Right, I agree with you, Mr. Lee. I think he has a lot to hide. And I think that's why the Attorney General of New York has been looking at, making sure that she would do something to bring him in to discuss this stuff. Just like his ill-fated academic institution, and they found out what was going on there. I think they found out a lot about Trump's personal finances if they were actually able to subpoena him and subpoena those records. And I think he's scared to death. And that's why he won't show the general public. He won't let the media see his personal income tax records. His files, I think, would be deadly not only to his campaign, but to he and his fortune and his family. Interesting.
Quick question. What do you think about the thought process? He's in a new kick now about the mail voting. It is my understanding and listening to the media and the newspapers that the post office is not delivering mail on time, and there's all kind of confusion. I think he said recently that if he loses it, it's because the system is rigged. But if he wins, it's okay. How do you interpret something like that? Again, I don't have anything personal against the president, but sometimes I don't understand his logic. If he loses, the system is rigged. But if he wins, it's okay. How do you answer something like that? I don't get it.
You can't. And that's what he did the last time. Remember, he talked about the fact that if he lost, the system was rigged. And he said Hillary would be the person who would be in charge of this country, and it would be an illegal election. And he warned that he might not accept the election and said that his supporters would not accept the election. And so we began to think about riots throughout the country because he set this up that way. And he's setting it up again for the same situation. He's trying to say, this could be an illegal election. I don't know if I'm going to accept the results. And if I don't get in, then my supporters may take to the streets.
Are you trying to say to me he's undermining the election?
I think he is. I think he certainly is. And I think the fact that he appointed, the fact that he appointed a friend who is the postmaster general, right? and he is telling him exactly what he wants to have done. It's so inappropriate. It's not even funny. The Postmaster General is in charge of the one institution that has always been dependable to Americans. What do we see? We see postal mail carriers taking the mail through rain, through sleet, snow. The postmen will always deliver the mail, right? And now people, even in rural sections of this country, are not getting the mail. They're not getting checks. They're not getting anything that they're supposed to get. They order things, they're not getting that in a timely fashion. So I think it's going to backfire on them, because there are a lot of Republican congressmen right now who are saying, we feel the same way the Democrats feel. We believe strongly that something needs to be done. And if he's listening to Mr. Trump and Mr. Trump is saying, slow down on the mail, or we're going to lock some mailboxes so that over the weekend you can't get in, or some mailboxes in certain cities will just be locked. And I've seen some pictures online. I don't know how true that is. But if he's doing things to make sure that he undermines the Postal Service before we get to the election day, can you imagine what he's going to try to do with the Postmaster General on the day of the election? I think the only thing Congress can do is to call him in and to make sure that he understands very clearly what the will of Congress is. And he understands that if he's doing anything unlawful, if the president does not return to office, that he's going to be held accountable for what happens if we win this election and when we win this election.
This is the greatest nation in the world. So it's hard for me to understand those type of things. I hope it doesn't go down that way. I hope it doesn't happen. I would like to think that Trump has a solid backing, and he should respect that and run and have his debate with Biden and see where things go. Having said that, you know, we talk a lot about the trauma, the black vote, and the Latino vote. Does Biden have a base as strong as Trump?
We have a base as strong as Trump. Our supporters are not as fervently supportive of this Biden-Kamala Harris team as Trump-Pence. The Trump-Pence supporters are passionate about this guy. You can't sway them. The passion of those voters goes above and beyond support for a candidate. It's almost cultish. And yet, in the Democratic Party, we have a strong enough base. We've just got to understand that whether you think that there's a perfect candidate out there or not, there really isn't. But Biden's the best we have, and so is Kamala Harris. So we've got to get out and vote and tell other people to vote for him, despite the fact that people may feel that there are some differences. Because on the other side, Trump supporters, they'll acknowledge everything you say that's wrong about the guy, and they'll still say, I'm going out and voting for him. So our base has got to be just as passionate. Do we have a strong enough base to beat him? Yes, we do. Do we have the votes to beat him? We do. Hillary Clinton beat him in the numbers by over 2 million votes. We've got to beat him in the Electoral College, and I think we can do that.
I got a very important question that's going to come up in all debates. In the primary, Kamala Harris went after Trump with all the barrels, and there was a clash there. The Republicans are going to bring that up. Matter of fact, they're saying that she's a bit of a hypocrite, that she was against him, and she accepted the fact that he called upon her to be a vice president. How do you see that panning out? How do you see her responding, and how do you see Biden will respond to these type of allegation and these type of attack? Because that's going to take place. It's really going to go down.
I think there were opponents before, but there was respect between the two opponents, and I think you can see the friendship between Beau Biden and Kamala Harris, Joe Biden's son. I think they're good friends.
So very close.
Right? So I think that, people just have to understand that, they were combatants in a ring, and they fought each other. It didn't mean that they didn't have the highest degree of respect for each other, and it didn't mean that they didn't like each other. I think, again, Biden will be strong, and Kamala Harris will be a strong supporter of him and his policies.
So you're comfortable to say that Biden is the man that can heal the issues that we have pending in this nation, and he can turn around all the issues that are causing a problem in this nation, the immigration, the other problems with coronavirus, and the economy. He can turn this around, you think?
I'm confident in his leadership to bring the people together, surround himself with the right people, to build the right cabinet, to build the right team throughout the leadership and government in DC that can turn this country around.
Can you name some of the accomplishments that our President Clinton have done in the last 3 years? Can you share that with our viewing audience? What are the solid accomplishments that our president had in the last 3 years?
President Trump?
Yes.
I struggle with that. I struggle with the fact that he has actually accomplished things that actually are things that he can hang his hat on, things that the American public will say he's done. He takes credit for the GI Bill, which has helped veterans, but that was started under Obama. So he takes credit for these stimulus checks because he put his name on the checks. But that was Donald Trump. That was done by the Senate and Congress, and he signed off on this stuff. He takes credit for a lot of things. As you said, Mr. Lee, he stated he's been the best thing for Black people ever since Lincoln. I don't see it. I'm trying to figure out what he's done for Black people that he can hang his hat on. And yet he states these things. I think there's a lot of fallacy in what he discusses with the public. I think he tweets out a lot of things that come off the top of his head, whether they're right or wrong. And I think his supporters believe it. And no one challenges him on this stuff. So I think now that you have a candidate for president who is running against him, in the debates, he will get challenged, because I struggle with the things that he's actually accomplished that are good, that he did not create, or I should say that he did create himself, because all of these things he talks about are things he didn't create, things he didn't put forth, things that he just took advantage of with Obama. Obama had the country on the right track with the economy. 77 straight months of rise in the percentage of the economic growth. And that's never happened before in this country's history. So he comes in and he takes advantage of that and he builds upon it. And he says, look at what I'm doing for the country. Look at the economy. But I'm trying to think of one thing that he started that I can say, he started that and this is going to be good for the country. Well, I can't think of one thing.
Let's go to something that's very interesting that those who are normal would wrestle with it like I have. What is the hate that he has with Obama? Everything that happened, it was Obama. He's in office for 3 years. Anything bad, it was the Obama administration. Why it's like that? What is this problem as far as you know? Why does dislike with Obama? What is the catch? What is the giddy up here?
I think there's a lot of jealousy there. I think there's a tremendous amount of envy. I think there's a lot of fear. And so you need to degrade a person so that they won't get to the point where they can hurt you in the public opinion. But public opinion is very fickle. And if you go after somebody enough, people will begin to turn on you. That's what happened with, in the last presidential election with him. The evangelical churches in the South were saying, look, they're crucifying this man. Look at what they're doing. He's being persecuted. A Christian man being persecuted like this, we need to stand behind him. So I think, again, when you take a look at the whole picture, I think Donald Trump is not a man who we want to see get another 4 years. I think he's a tenant in public housing in Washington, D.C., and the taxpayers need to need to come out of their houses. I don't want to say get out. I want to say come out of their houses on election day and evict this man from public housing.
Well, we have just maybe another 2 minutes. One question I want to ask you, I'm quite sure you saw on television and seen in the newspaper, the book that his niece wrote and her feeling about him and some of the stories that she has put up about his behavior at home and in public. What's your thought process?
I think that anytime you have a family member that comes out and says those things, then you have other family members who have sided with her and said, we agree with her. We think that what he's done has been reprehensible. And we've seen the Trump that no one else sees, the private side of Trump. And we believe he's racist. We believe he's sexist. We believe he's very selfish. I think people need to take that very seriously. The fact that she's putting out this book right before the election is not coincidental. I'm sure she wanted to do something to make sure that this hurt her uncle. But I don't think she lied in the book. I think some of those things have been things that we've all heard for years. We just didn't have a family source to basically come out and say, you're right. All the things you've heard that you thought might be true, they are true. And this is the type of person you have as the leader of the free world.
Having said that, we're down to the nitty-gritty now. So, come November 3rd, who you think is going to be the president of this great nation?
I think right now we're very clear. The president will be Joe Biden and the vice president will be Kamala Harris. I think the poll numbers have been steady over the last few months, and I think Kamala Harris adds strength to the ticket. I think a lot of Republicans are now saying that they would rather a Democrat in the White House than this man who was in the White House right now. And I think if you polled a number of the Republican leaders and privately whispered in their ear, would you do it all over again? I think they'd whisper back, I want a do-over. Give me a mulligan.
Well, time will tell. Based on those final words, I want to take the opportunity on behalf of the family of the Grapevine to thank Mr. Andrews so much for being our special guest and for important his thought process about the upcoming election, and we'll see where we'll go from here. Again, I still think and I believe and I know America is the greatest country in the entire world. Let the voters speak and see where we go. Again, this is Wallingford Lee saying good night for the International Grapevine, and thank you for watching our program. We hope to see you next week at the same time and the same place. Good night.
Good night.